Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Purpose and Progress podcast show. I'm your host, Dr. Jim Price. And here on this show, we share inspirational, motivational stories about people who are inspiring others to be the best versions of themselves through self-awareness, self-love, understanding all the aspects of themselves that can help them create abundance and create positivity in their life. So we should love to share all the stories of wonderful folks that are able to inspire change. And sometimes people will see people that are successful and they don't always know the process that it took to get there. And this show is definitely about seeing that process. People see the glitz and the glamour and all the good things happening, but they don't always know about the story that it took to get there, the journey that happened to get there. And today is no different. We have a fabulous guest today. He is an executive advisor and founder and host of the Don Wood Show podcast, formerly known as Men's Leadership, God's Way, drawing on his background in corporate leadership and athletic training. He helps executives manage stress, strengthen self-awareness, and lead lives of greater purpose. And I'm glad to and blessed to have on the show Don Wood. How you doing, Don?
Well, thank you, Jim. It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you for opening up to be a guest on the show as well. We're always wanting to find and connect with people who are inspiring others to be the best versions of themselves and inspiring change in a positive way. And so I mean, it's no different with you. You've definitely seen a lot of success already, and we're gonna get into a little bit of that of how the process of the journey. There's always a process. There's always a journey. That precipitates getting to the levels and the steps of success or wherever it is, reaching those goals, reaching those aspirations of what you want to reach to. So we're going to touch upon that and get to know the journey and stuff. So to start off, we would like to maybe find out when do you feel that your journey started and kind of what influenced that?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say my journey began when I was a young boy at home.
Yeah.
I grew up in an alcoholic household
Hmm.
where I had to be on alert,
Yeah.
high alert all the time,
Mhm.
and I had to be resourceful,
Yeah.
and I had to know when to perform and when to stay quiet.
Mhm.
And there were nights where I could hear my mother yelling for me because my father was hitting her, and I would run down and I would try to rescue my mom. And so at a very early age, I learned adaptability and I learned leadership skills of how to deal with stress under pressure without even realizing it at probably too young of an age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I remember by the time I was in third grade, I would be sitting alone in the cafeteria drinking milk because at that time, that's how you treated ulcers.
Mhm.
And I'd be sitting there all alone in the cafeteria thinking, here I am. I'm the only one in the cafeteria. I'm by myself. So I had to create an environment for myself where I could entertain myself and create a new reality
Yeah.
in terms of becoming adaptable to things that were, to be honest, lonely for
Yeah.
me. Um, Another thing, and I share this in many of the articles that I write. One night, my father was beating my mother, and I went to the phone to call the police, and he took the receiver out of my hand and he hit my forearm many times with the receiver. And then before we knew it, he had left,
Yeah.
and there I was sitting in my mom's lap,
Mhm.
and I was looking at my forearm with the bumps that had formed on my forearm. I remember running my finger over the bumps, pretending that it was a train going through the mountains. And it was this kind of adaptability or this adaptive strategy that I would create from a very young age that really lended itself to be becoming very effective in leadership when I entered the corporate world.
Mhm. Wow. I mean, and usually that just thanks for being so open and candid and honest with your experiences and stuff like that. I think sometimes a lot of people they hear messages like that and they feel like, okay, well, some other people are experiencing the same thing and being able to overcome those obstacles and stuff like that and work through. And sometimes, a lot of time, trauma is the thing that propels us to, change in a positive direction. And maybe in some cases, even for myself, like kind of trauma and stuff can open up those doors of purpose and understanding one on a deeper level. So I'm, like those experiences are definitely traumatic experiences, and they stay with you even, when you get through working through the trauma and stuff like that, and get to that point where you can kind of, put yourself in a position where you're dealing with your purpose and what you're meant to be here for, to help others, inspire others and let them know they can overcome obstacles, even, in situations like that. That's just a heartfelt story of perseverance in that way. And I thank you for sharing that, being open and candid about that experience, and uh, and it allows our audience too to also be able to understand, that even through our experiences, we can turn those experiences to something positive in our
That's
lives when
exactly
we
right.
go through the traumatic experiences and stuff. So, wow, that's such a
And you can imagine coming out of that household, I didn't have a lot of confidence.
yes.
And because my father would always say to me, "You're never going to amount to anything."
Mhm.
And so I didn't do well in high school
Yeah.
because I withdrew.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to go to college. And I remember a friend of mine was going to this university, and I wanted to go and be with him.
Yeah.
I'll never forget receiving that rejection letter
Wow.
saying you're not admitted. And so I was determined
Mhm.
to prove myself. So I went to community college for 2 years.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I did so well in community college that I went on to enroll into the most competitive university in the state system. It was Binghamton. It was State University of New York at Binghamton,
Yeah.
and I got accepted.
Yeah.
And when I went, both of my roommates were valedictorians of their high school class, and I thought, I don't belong here. And I remember being so terrified that first semester,
Mhm.
but I showed up,
Yeah.
and I did well.
Mhm.
And in my senior year, I learned that my mom was terminally ill from cancer.
Yeah.
And so all those years I had promised myself I would never be like my father.
Mhm.
But I went to the one coping mechanism that I learned from my father about how to deal with the news of my mother's terminal illness,
Yeah.
and that was drinking.
Mhm. Yeah.
And by the time I reached my final semester of my senior year, I had to make a decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom said, Don, I want you to go and take care of yourself. And so what I did is I enrolled in rehab,
Mhm.
and I had to forego graduation
Wow.
to go to rehab. And when I was in rehab, my mom passed away. And I remember that day that I learned that she had passed away. I had made a promise to myself
Mhm.
that I was going to go into recovery and do it for her. I was going to dedicate my recovery to her. And to this day, I'm 32 years into sobriety.
Wow.
And what it's done for me is it's given me the tools to have empathy and concern and genuine care for others
Mhm.
when I'm helping them through their traumatic events in life.
Wow, that is, oh my goodness. I mean, talk about trials, tribulations, and obstacles in life. I mean, grief and loss, those are all, all that is traumatic in that sense, when you lose loved ones. And sometimes, even with myself, when my grandmother passed, I kind of blocked it out for like 2 years. And, like it never happened. But eventually I got to the point where I had to, work on that and heal and go through that process of the true grieving aspects of things. And sometimes it takes time, and everybody deals with trauma and grieving and all those things in different ways. Everybody has their own way
Right.
of dealing with it, and however you deal with it is okay, because everything happens with divine timing. So however people deal with their grief or trauma and stuff, at some point, there can be change, there can be positive change, there can be growth from those experiences and stuff like that. So I always like to say, sometimes these obstacles and stuff in life actually help us grow stronger. so that we get where
100%.
we want to go. I mean, we'll appreciate it more because of all the things that we went through to get there. That's a message that I always like to share sometime to out. And I noticed, I mean, you've really shared so many of the obstacles that you faced throughout your journey. So, I mean, is there probably within your feeling like maybe an obstacle that was probably the most difficult for you out of all the obstacles that you did face? I know you mentioned about all the grief and the trauma in terms of growing up childhood and stuff. You know, if you were to say probably one of those was probably projecting you to go toward your purpose, which were out of them, like what would you say would it be?
Well, when I went into sobriety,
Mhm.
I really turned to my relationship with Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
And I learned that I was created for a purpose
Yes.
and that God was even more interested in my life than I was because he wanted to make sure that my purpose that he created me for was to be carried out while I was here. And that I was given a couple of gifts
Mhm.
that I was to use to serve others. And that's when I would feel the best about myself. And that's the message that I send to everyone is that you have a couple of gifts that are meant to be developed so that you can serve others. And if you think about it in your life,
Yeah.
when have you felt the best about yourself? It's when you've helped someone and you're using the gifts that you've been given, and you would do it all day long if you could.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the truth. I mean, sometimes how they say sometimes people are light workers and they kind of, that's what the spirit kind of leads them to do, to help others. That's they have a helping spirit about themselves. And you get good things in return. You get good karma and all this good stuff in return when you're able to help others and be genuine about it, be like it's really within your heart. Versus sometimes people just do things just to do it. But when you can do things from your heart and do it genuinely and mean what you're doing when you're trying to help others, it's so much more meaningful and so much more impactful too, as well, when you're able to do it in that way. So, I mean, you're definitely on that path to, purpose and, light worker kind of, aspect of things, incorporating God and all those things, on your journey as you continue on and continue to inspire people and stuff like that. I would also like to, as far as like achievements, what do you feel for you um, may have been achievement that you kind of hold dear to you, or like if you were to say like this I hold this kind of whatever achievement it is that's kind of dear to me.
Well, that's a great question, Jim, because it was a situation where I was a junior in high school.
Mhm.
I played football.
Mhm.
And as you know, with football, they have two-a-days
Yeah.
that take place 2 weeks before school begins,
Mhm.
where you come home and you're so tired you don't even want to eat dinner.
Yeah.
You just want to go right to bed and hopefully get ready for the next day. And it was a
Mhm.
Friday evening,
Mhm.
and my mom and dad went out to dinner, and I was in bed. And this was back in the days where they didn't have voicemail.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
the phone rang and rang and rang.
Yeah.
So finally I got up and I went and I answered it. And this woman who was on the other line sounded intoxicated.
Mhm.
And she said, Donnie, is your mother home? And I said, no, she's out to dinner. She said, please tell her that Kathy called
Mhm.
and it's very important that she calls me when she gets home. So I left a note, went back to bed. An hour later, my mother yells upstairs, Donnie, get your clothes on. You're coming with me. Because my mom and dad had returned. My father was intoxicated, so he went to bed.
Mhm.
And it was a note that I'd left for this woman that was a friend of my mom's who was in labor.
Wow.
And she lived out in the country, in the middle of nowhere in the country. And so my mom and I went, we called the ambulance. The ambulance couldn't find the place.
Mhm.
And my mom and myself delivered a baby on Labor Day weekend.
Wow.
And it was the miracle of childbirth that my mom and I had participated in. And right after the baby was born,
Mhm.
that's when the ambulance showed up. So I had called my football coach and said, I can't make it to practice because I was up all night delivering a baby, and he thought it was a joke and he hung up on me.
Wow,
because
that
he thought it was a prank because it was Labor Day weekend.
yeah. Now that right there, that is a glorified achievement right there. I'm telling you, to be able to be in a situation where you were able to help someone in that way, and I mean during a situation like that.
And this is a message I give to people is that God will put you into situations where you won't feel like you're ready,
Yeah.
but you are because God's with you and he's going to see to it that you're going to work through this, whatever difficulty you have in life, and you're going to get to the other side of this. Because I'll say to people, no matter how difficult your life is,
Mm.
there's two things you can always say to yourself. It's not always going to be this way.
Yeah.
And this is not the end of the story. It's only part of the story.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes people, how they say, the storm doesn't last always. So, I mean, sometimes people have storms in their lives, and that's a part of life. You get storms in your life, and eventually the sun does come out to shine. And it's just about persevering and pushing through that storm and doing the things you need to do to stay positive, keep a positive mindset and all that stuff too in that way.
And
Um,
it prepares us for the challenges that are ahead in our lives.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you were to say, in terms of like future projects and or things like that, maybe that's in the works for you. What are some things that you're looking forward to working on and or in future projects?
Yeah, I just finished a book.
Mhm.
It's called Forged: How Surviving the Unthinkable, what it taught me about leadership.
Yeah.
And later on in life, after I had a corporate career, um, I decided that I wanted to serve the Lord in the ministry. So I left a very good job at Bell South in Atlanta, Georgia, to go off to seminary.
Mhm.
And I came back to Atlanta and then moved up here to Massachusetts,
Mhm.
where I had a local television show called Heart Coach for Life,
Yeah.
where I would read scripture and I would say, now we're going to apply this scripture to your life today. And I built that bridge.
Mhm.
Well, in the middle of all that, um, one day I was writing something for the show and I had this intense pain in my lower right side.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's going on? And the next thing I know, I was down on the floor in agony. And my wife came in and rushed me to the hospital.
Yeah.
And it was the beginning of an 18-month journey where I went through 11 surgeries in 18
Wow.
months. Yeah. Started out with kidney stones, which led to septic shock surgeries, which led to open heart surgery, and I
Oh,
lost a kidney.
yeah.
And through that whole journey, the medical professionals were just amazed at how they said to me, you take everything in stride, you never complain, and you just accept everything. And
Yeah.
it was because here I was sitting in my bed after all these surgeries and realizing that there was nothing I could do beyond the length of my bed.
Yeah. Oh,
Anything that was going on, I had no control over.
yeah.
And
Wow.
God had me one on one right where He wanted me. And He wanted me to know that this is your purpose going forward, is to encourage people that are going through burnout, pressure, and stress.
Mhm. Wow.
And so I really have a heart for men. A lot of executives today have a hidden challenges that people don't see. They only see them from the lens of performance.
Mhm.
And so I want to let men know that I understand them and I can help them get to the other side where they can live a life of wellness with their relationships, with their career, with their family, and their overall purpose and why they're here in the first place.
Wow, that is so inspirational. And sometimes people just don't always know how to navigate a lot of that and stuff in their own personal lives and everything. That is just done. I mean, that this has been such an inspirational, whole holistic way of looking and experiencing things. How can our viewers be able to connect with you in terms of your work and things of that nature?
The best way to get in touch with me is just go to my site at donwoodadvisory.com. And there's all kinds of resources and ways where you can get in touch with me if you want to work with me individually or in with groups.
And could you say that one more time just so our audience can?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's donwoodadvisory.com.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Don, I mean, this has been such a fabulous conversation, an inspiring conversation in a lot of ways. I'm sure our audience and viewers are going to be inspired in so many ways just by all the wealth and knowledge that you've shared with us today and being open and candid about your experiences and those experiences being able to uplift others and know that they can go through and meet challenges as well. So I appreciate you, Don, joining us today on another fabulous episode. It's so, I mean, we're always blessed, Don, and it's definitely been a pleasure to have you on the show, Don.
Thank you, Jim, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. So once again, this is an episode of the Purpose and Progress podcast show. I'm your host, Dr. Jim Price. And as we do, we try to motivate others to be the best versions of themselves, to go through healing, overcome trauma and things, and share the journey of others who have similar experiences and go through those things through a motivational lens and everything. So please subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Stay blessed.